Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Paranormal Misfit Podcast. I am your host, Chrissy, and I'm here to talk about all things horror, macabre, paranormal, cryptids, and everything in between. So, hopefully you have found yourself a nice comfy spot and a hauntingly delicious drink, and I hope you're ready to listen along. How's everyone doing? Everyone good? I feel like I need to check on my own mental health because this week hasn't really kicked my teeth in. I'm not gonna lie. So you may see me sip on a beer, but don't worry. It's not like that. It's just kind of like a de-stressor because it has been a god-awful week. But anyways, enough about that, right? We want to hear about some scary shit. Ooh, excuse me. Anyways, so tonight's episode is a movie review. And the movie is The Last Thing Mary Saw, and you can find it on Shudder. It's a Shudder original from 2021, and it's set in 1843, and the film follows the youngest daughter of a very strict religious family who she ends up being under investigation after the mysterious death of her family's ominous matriarch. One thing you have to know about this movie, and I will go ahead and say it now as opposed to the end of the episode, this movie's a total slow burner. Kind of a slow burner the way The Witch was. And if you like the ambiance and that kind of pacing for a movie, you'll totally love this then. I am still kind of 50-50 on it. I really did like the story. And I like, the creep factor to it. But some of it, I don't know. It could have had a little bit more, I think. But anyways, that's beside the point. So once again, we're in Southold, New York, 1843. So 1843, we're looking at the nasty plantation type of time period-ish, maybe. Don't quote me. I'm terrible at history, even though I'm taking a class right now. More so, my brain's just fried. So, but when you see this house, your immediate thought is plantation house. So anyways, religious setting, and we see a young woman blindfolded, and she's being brought into a room for an interrogation. And as she's about to be interrogated, blood is coming from this area underneath the blindfold, so where her eyes would be. She's asked to recite the Lord's Prayer as two men draw muskets at her. Satisfied with how she recites the Lord's Prayer, they start the interrogation. So the father of the church leads the interrogation, and Mary begins to share her tale. So this is done in a chapter format. After so long, a new, they name a new portion of the movie after a chapter. So with this, Mary is in what seems to be a lesbian relationship with another woman who happens to be the maid of the family. Her parents asked for the matriarch to step in, and that would, basically like the grandma, to step in. And then what you see from this is that plantation's on a huge amount of land, right? And they have their own border patrol. Well, border guard. Definitely one. So anyway, so as he's patrolling the border, you see 4 or 5 very serious men with a very serious pace walking towards the house. He seems kind of scared, so he steps off to the side because obviously they mean business. And these 4 or 5 men are seen walking straight to the house where the family lives. And here you kind of, you see the men, well, a man, but the men are all in the room with the family. But you see a main man and the matriarch kind of having, like a discussion. And the discussion is they would really like for these men to take the maid away, so that Mary no longer is tempted by the sin. And basically, the man says no, because they feel that even if they take her away, it's not going to break the bond of the two women. It's just going to draw them more together, right? So they're just like, no, we don't want any part of this. So anyways, it gets a little later, and behind a cracked door, which is a little boy snooping through, we can't really tell if it's the cousin or the brother because it seems like the whole family lives in this house. Grandmother, grandfather, uncles, could be a cousin, could not be, who knows. Anyways, so behind the cracked door, he peeps in and he sees two women kneeling on the ground in rice as a punishment for the sin and told to recite the Lord's word, which causes a very, very uncomfortable scene because, oh my God, my niece like could never do it. So as Mary gets through, obviously reciting the prayer, the maid is left behind on rice and is watched by the men and the matriarch. So we're coming back to the interrogation again with Mary, and Mary decides in a very defiant manner to ask the constable if he was pleased and how the seventh man was brought in. So jumping back again in the time period, which really isn't that much of a time period, but back in the story, basically. Mary's consoling the maid, and it's either her, like I said, it's either the cousin or the brother is listening in. It's a little brother. And he, out of snooping, almost hurts himself. Well, not almost hurts himself. He hurts himself because he's standing on a wooden box and basically cuts the bottom of his foot open. And so we see Mary and the maid trying to come up with like a plan. How can we see each other? How can they can't do this kind of thing, right? So the maid is taking porridge to another worker who happens to be the border guard. And this guy actually has a fairly mangled leg, which resulted from the man of the house beating him and basically breaking his leg. So he tells the maid that fear makes them, which is the staff, stay. It seems as though the kids are kept far away from the woods. You don't really see them outside playing near the woods. They kind of stay in the green, patchy areas in the yard. So anyways, so, you know, as the maid's listening to the guy's story, the maid makes a deal with the male worker by offering him baked bread in return for the girls being allowed to kind of hide in the chicken coop at night, and he just kind of keep watch, you know, kind of signal if someone's coming or anything like that. So anyway, so the girls, you know, immediately that night run out to the chicken coop, and they're laying on the floor of the chicken coop, which sanitary. And they're just kind of like, I don't know, I call it gawking. You know, like that school age crush kind of gawking you used to do with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It's kind of like that. So nothing really happens. You know, they're laying on the ground of the coop, and the following day, a man scares the maid as she's baking bread, right? He's bald, he's creepy, he's strange, and you don't know what happens behind the closed door. The only assumption can be made that he basically destroyed the bread that the maid was making to be able to kind of, you know, keep up her part of the deal with the guard. And that really pisses the guard off because he doesn't have bread. Instead, he's eating nasty fucking porridge again. So because she has no bread for him, you know, he tells her, enjoy the sunlight. So basically stop hiding in the darkness. So Mary wants her and the maid to run away together. And after a small spat, they cuddle. And then, you know, I don't remember how that deal got made. They still ran out to the chicken coop and went hiding. The maid starts reading some sort of book. And oddly enough, this book, you learn later, is how they chaptered the movie. So each chapter of this book is each chapter of this movie. So anyways, the matriarch catches the girls in the coop and in a sinister way, very sinister way, levitates the maid and begins choking her without ever touching her. The young boy, as nosy as he was, had also followed them all out and had seen it as well and begins to recite the Lord's prayers. Very wild shit. So at one point, the maid ends up being, she can't talk anymore. And part of it is because during the levitation, something starts coming out of her throat, like here, like coming out. right? Don't know what it is, don't know whatever happened past that. So anyways, so the next, you can't really tell if it's the next morning, a couple days after or whatever, but the maid is making tea and she breaks up a tablet into the tea. So is it poison? Could she just be drugging somebody? You don't know, right? And anyway, so in the process of this, the little boy comes and apologizes to Mary, and she blames him for his snooping around, getting her and her love in trouble, basically. So the matriarch, or the grandmother, Mary's father is her son, and he blames the book he brought for which the girls are reading and states that it'll bring death into the house. He demands that the maid be kicked out, and then you see the cup of tea that was assumed to have poison in it. And oddly enough, it's a cup of tea for the matriarch, and she dies. And then Mary finds her, and she signals the maid from the second story, I guess, to let her know that the deed was done. They must have conspired together. You don't really get the full story on that one. Anyways, so during the funeral, the family takes a vow of silence, and here we move to chapter 2. A strange hooded man walks up to the property where the male worker is guarding. He tells him of the maid who can no longer talk. The stranger tells of the birthmark on his face that was assumed to be made out of basically lovemaking out of wedlock. So kind of like the scarlet letter, he has it on his face, basically. So he gets into the kitchen. Obviously, the maid can't talk, so he's doing all the talking. He shows her a pouch, maybe, and then he forces himself onto her. With a loud crash, it can be heard from the kitchen where the maid is by the family, right? And it's insinuated that basically he grapes her, because at the end you can see them fixing their clothes and she has a look of absolute despair and disgust, just pissed off. I would be pissed off too. So he antagonizes her some more, and she slices his fingers off in retaliation with the butcher cleaver, which is a lot nicer than what I would have done. Anyways, she slices his fingers off. He runs off with some bread that she made after Mary walks in, and then there's another creep. Like, they're all fucking creepy, all the men. Another creep is there, bites into the apple, scaring the girls. The father looking at the deceased grandmother, and as you're looking at the deceased grandmother, she has one of her index fingers is absolutely black. So think like, how do I explain this? Think like really terrible frostbite kind of black, like basically should have been amputated, Black Plague, or even Harry Potter and Dumbledore's hand, right? So anyways, so we get to dinner time. The maid is once again kneeling on rice without her dress on, basically in her undergarments, in front of the family as they eat dinner. So her back is turned to the family, but she has to kneel and fucking rice again. Mary is seen missing from the table, but come to find out, I believe she's either standing behind like her uncle or maybe the grandpa. I don't know. They didn't really say much, right? But the lack of talking and the amount of staring that happens in this scene is absolutely terrifying. So Mary's given a nod from her uncle. Maybe it's the guy at the head of the table. Her dad was sitting elsewhere, so it's not him. He gets a nod. He gives her a nod and begins to pour the tea. She pulls out the pouch, which seems to be the same pouch that had the poison from the last time. So the poison that killed the grandmother, or the matriarch, is seen again. Let's see. As she hands out the tea, she skips over her young brother at first, but then gives him the last cup. The poison starts to take hold, and one by one, the family members perish. However, the father doesn't, as he swapped cups with the little boy because the little boy was basically packing his tea full of sugar. The maid gets up to see the scene that Mary has caused, and they embrace. As Mary yells at her father to speak, he is shot by the stranger who forced himself onto the maid in the kitchen. So the old border guard is killed by him, because the reason why you would know that is because of the gun that he's holding. The gun that he's holding was the border guard's gun. Is he a thief, or is he something more demonic, right? So he shoots the maid dead in front of Mary. And it's found that the grandmother, the matriarch, called the stranger to the house. And as Mary is asking him, the dead body of the matriarch rises and walks towards her. Everything revolves once again around that book that Mary's father brought in. And as Mary reads the last chapter about the final destruction of sinful actions of the girls, it plays out basically how the movie goes. The maid ends up dead, the girl with her eyes removed. And as the constable finds Mary humming in the attic, blind and missing eyes, we come back to the interrogation. They take her out to hang her as a witch. One takes off the blindfolds, which obviously are empty eye sockets, and then the other one kicks a stool from under her feet. The movie ends with Mary hanging and a twitch in her finger. So, it's not fun. It's a good movie, right? Especially if you like those kind of slow burner time period pieces. So some fun tidbits about this movie. Like I said, the movie is made in chapters from the book that it revolves around. Rory Culkin, Stephanie Scott, and Isabella Furum star in it. And the matriarch is actually played by Judith Roberts, which if you're an Eraserhead fan, you know who she is. So would I recommend this movie as a must watch? Not really, but if you got about an hour and a half to sit and watch, then do it, especially if you like the period horrors, right? Like if you like The Witch and you like, witch trial type movies and stuff. Like I said, it moves slow. It definitely wasn't terrible by any means. It just wasn't much. And like, I really did like The Witch, and I do love some period pieces and all of that. It had some strong elements to it to add to the creep factor. Like it had, just the ambiance itself, the movement, the way, like the haze would set and everything in the outside, like in the environment and stuff. And just kind of the way they made everyone's demeanor was really good. But I feel it was lacking a little bit to really put the whole story all together, because I guess it would have been nice if there was more of an explanation of the book that they were referencing and basically chaptering each portion of this movie after. Or maybe I missed it. There's no telling. It was Halloween. It was a late night. So who knows? I do think it's one of those movies that you should definitely give it a try. Maybe you like it more than I do. It's great. It's just not something I would probably watch again, like a have to kind of watch, right? As I said, the cast was really good. Rory Culkin plays the stranger. You don't get like an explanation of a lot of pieces. It's done by Eduardo Violettis. It's his debut. So it's a New England Puritan community. So that explains like the really religious aspect of it. And I don't know. So I like it because they use a lot of natural light, and they also use candles, right, as the illumination. They don't add all of the extra stage lighting and stuff like that, which makes it even good. The actors usually speak in like really low tones, and tones that are meant to be kind of like a one note. You can't tell what emotion they're doing. And this is also low budget. So for low budget, it's really good. It doesn't, it's not like, I don't know. It's not gory by any means. It's not anything too terrible. So the maid is played by the girl who was in Orphan. She I believe she was Orphan, the orphan girl in that movie. The other lead, which is Mary, was from Insidious 3. Let's see if anyone has anything else. Yeah. So like the thing that was really uncomfortable about like the rice, right, is that when you're thinking about it, they're trying to basically do like an aversion therapy for these girls, which isn't cool. It doesn't tell you how long they made them sit or kneel on that rice. It could have been a couple hours, could have been a few days. Like you don't really know. Um, let's see. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. It's nothing that you should run and go watch it or anything, but definitely something that if you have time and you have Shudder, check it out. It's a good piece. It's not fabulous, but it's good. And it's good for what it does. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and everything that was shared. Are you going to check out the movie? If you do check out the movie, let me know. If you've already watched the movie, let me know what you thought about it. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share. You can always check out the previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you're streaming. And hopefully by the beginning of next year, I will be up on YouTube. Connect with me on Instagram at Paranormal Misfit Podcast, or you can always shoot me an email at paranormalmisfitpod@gmail.com. Any suggestions you have, you want me to cover a certain topic or anything like that, just let me know. If you really enjoyed the episodes or would like to support this podcast, feel free to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. I will link it down below in the show notes. And I will also, once again, share like the title of the movie and where I found it streaming. And other than that, I hope you guys have a fabulous evening.